Afternoon, everyone. A very wet afternoon from Portsmouth, where I've parked up this weekend, um, overlooking a beautiful view actually of the city of Portsmouth and the Solent and the Isle of Wight, which is pretty much invisible due to the rain, but it's lovely nonetheless. Nice quiet spot. Somebody mentioned that they like me reading these things out, so I'm going to read today from Meanderings, my first book, which documents my first 9-year lap of the globe, which I started at 18 years old. This is a couple of years in, and there's a reason I mentioned in this bit. The person concerned was struck by the idea of choices, the choices that we have that we don't always realise. So this is chapter 1, or excerpts from chapter 1. You're lucky you are, said a co-worker as I sat down for lunch on my break from washing up in the kitchen of the Hotel Majestic in Harrogate, North Yorkshire. He'd heard I was working my 1 week's notice, had asked me where I was going, and I'd told him that I was heading back to Hong Kong. What makes you say that? I asked. Well, you've been here and you've been there and you've done this and you've done that, he said. Ah, I answered. You want to go? Oh, I'd love to, he exclaimed. Okay, I said, hooking my thumb towards the door. There's the door. Off you go. What, right now? He scoffed dismissively and incredulously. Right now, this minute, I confirmed. He looked at me as if I was a complete idiot and started searching for reasons why this couldn't happen. I'm going to skip on a bit because there's other things discussed, and then we come back to the idea of the reason we need to travel geographically is that we are the centre of our universe, but so is everyone else in theirs. Going to visit them is a good way to catch a glimpse of their universe, therefore. It's also great fun. That thought in itself is worthy of some attention. The colleague who thought I was so lucky had not realised something, and to be fair, I hadn't realised it either at that age, at least not consciously. We create our universe as we go, and we have far more choice than we realise or give ourselves credit for. There are, as we shall see, many reasons why we don't believe that we have them, but there are always at least 2 choices in any given situation. To illustrate this, let's skip back to the conversation I began this chapter with in the Majestic Hotel's staff canteen. I can't just get up and go right now, protested my colleague. I'd lose a week's pay for a start. That's true, I said. You'd lose a week's pay. So, okay, if that week's money is so important to you, put your notice in to keep it and go through the door a week from now. But I don't know what I'd do when I got there. Neither do I. I'd probably go back to teaching English. But when I first went, I had really no idea. In fact, I didn't even know there was such a thing as teaching English to foreigners. That's how green I was, I explained. Yeah, but where would I stay? Again, no idea. All these questions are only answered when you arrive. He remained unconvinced that he could do this. As the conversation went on, he listed all the things stopping him. The security of a salary, a flat, food, knowing what he would do each day, each week. In the end, I made my point like this. The thing is, you like your life the way it is. You like the fact that you have, or think you have, security. The idea of travelling is nice, but not nice enough for you to give up your security. I have no security, and the security I could have is not attractive enough to make me give up my freedom and lifestyle of exploring. But the important thing to realise is that we are both making choices. It's nothing to do with luck. I wanted to travel and made sure I did. You want your security and make sure you have it. The price of travelling would be your security. That's what I pay for my travelling. But don't say I'm lucky. You can, if you wish, walk straight out of that door right now and go. Of course he didn't. He was, like the vast majority of the population, in the mindset of wanting security. And I go on a little bit more about choices and things. Getting back to my workmate, skipping on here, but getting back to my workmate and his picture of having no choice. The thought was somewhere in my subconscious had not yet fully bubbled through to the surface, but the way I can describe it nowadays is like this. In every situation, and I mean every situation, there are at least 2 choices. We only say we have no choice when neither of the 2 choices are particularly attractive, when we would prefer further options. But but nonetheless, one of them will be more so than the other, or at least less unattractive, and that is based on which consequence we prefer. Let's take as an example 9/11. Bit of an extreme example, but it illustrates the point. There was some poor unfortunate stuck on the tower above where the plane hit. We remembered with horror the sight of people hurtling towards the ground, having jumped from windows, realizing that there was no chance of escaping the flames. At that moment, they had two choices. Stay, with the consequence of burning to death relatively slowly and extremely painfully, or, scary though it must have been, jump, hit the ground at over 100 miles an hour, and die instantly. They made that choice. They jumped. It's perhaps easy to understand why some might say they had no choice, but actually they did. The options open to them were both awful. Both consequences were death. But one set of consequences was still preferable to the other, even so. Now, fortunately, most of us will never find ourselves in such a terrible or extreme circumstance, but we may well find ourselves in very unpleasant situations nonetheless. Situations where the only options open to us are not the ones we would wish for. It may sound pedantic, but in such cases we should not say that we have no choice, but rather we should recognise that we are choosing between two or more options, even though none of them is particularly appealing. The reason I'm being so pedantic on this is because of the profound effect it has on our subconscious. Saying I have, or had, no choice is disempowering. As long as we bear in mind that we decided, that we chose, we will feel in charge of the situation rather than governed by it. Or perhaps more accurately, that we're in charge of our own responses to a given situation. There are many times through life when we are faced with situations we cannot control or change, but we can choose our response to them. In fact, that's exactly what we do already. It just doesn't always feel that way that we do. By being mindful of the fact that we are choosing and deciding every time, and by consciously reminding ourselves of this, we start to feel stronger and more empowered in actually a quite short space of time. There's more to the point. Please have a look. You can get this from Amazon in paperback or Kindle, and from feederead.com. feederead.com. Just search the title Meanderings with my name. Thank you for listening. Have a drier weekend.